Hey guys. Tonight, we slip through the swinging doors of a Wild West saloon, not as a gunslinger or gambler, but as someone far more dangerous, the madame, who owns the place. You wake up with straw in your hair and gunpowder in your lungs, curled into a brass bed above the ruckus of creaking floorboards, and yesterday's whiskey breath rising through the cracks. Below you, somewhere, a bottle shatters. A piano groans its last note. Someone swears in a language you don't recognize. And someone else, probably Buckley, is throwing up again. Welcome to the start of your day. You run this place. And honestly, you probably won't survive this decade. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and the local time in the comments. Always fun to see where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up to the sound of boots stomping below you. It's not dawn yet. But in saloon time, who even knows your room smells like perfume, sweat, and gun oil, the signature scent of survival. A dented coffee pot sits on the stove, still warm, and you pour a half cup of whatever's left before dragging yourself to the mirror. You look like yesterday's regrets in a red velvet robe, your hair in a tangle of pins and last night's secrets. The lace curtains are stained with nicotine, and the lamp beside your bed flickers like it's considering retirement. Someone knocks at your door, then thinks better of it. Good call. You pad across the crooked floorboards barefoot, dodging a nail that's poked through again. There's a pistol under your pillow, because of course there is, and you shove it into your waistband without blinking. You don't even remember putting it there. Could have been last night when that cowboy tried to sweet-talk you with a toothpick and a stolen wedding ring. You don't ask questions anymore. Just stories. And everyone's got one. Downstairs, the saloon is a battlefield of broken glasses, half-eaten tamales, and a chair someone threw at the card table. You step carefully, pushing open the back door to let in the morning air dry. Gritu. Already hot. The desert doesn't care about your hangover or your debts. It just bakes everything evenly. You've got 10 girls on rotation. 4 of them still sleeping. 3 likely missing. And 1 who's pretending to be asleep so she doesn't have to clean. Smart girl. You're not mad. You did the same thing once. Back when you were 15. Wide-eyed, and fresh off a train from Kansas City. Back before you owned anything but a corset and a prayer, you pick your way to the bar, stepping over what might be someone's molar, and start counting the register. There's always a little missing. Always. Either your bartender skimmed, or your girls took advance pay again. You don't yell. Yelling wastes breath. Instead, you leave notes. Tiny threats written in lipstick on broken plates. It gets the message across. Out back, the stable boy has fallen asleep on a hay bale again. He's 14 and thinks you're terrifying. You are. You tell him to fetch fresh water, mop the floor, and scrub the blood from the spittoon again. He nods like his life depends on it. Smart boy. You give him a hard candy from your pocket. Because kindness terrifies people even more than cruelty out here. By mid-morning, you're back upstairs, scrubbing dried mascara from your face with whiskey and a torn chemise. There's no soap left. The local general store promised a shipment last week, but you suspect they sold it all to the preacher's wife, who bathes twice a day out of spite. There's a knock again. This time, firmer. You open the door to find Cora, one of your best earners, with a black eye and a busted heel, fell down the stairs. She says, "She didn't. You know who did this." And he still passed out in the corner booth, with his boots off and his hand down his pants. You tell her to soak a rag in cold beer works better than water, and you'll handle the rest. She winces, not because of the eye, because she knows what handle means. You reload your pistol. There are rules in your place. No slapping the girls. No cheating at poker unless you're very good at it. No spitting indoors unless it's in the designated spittoon, or directly into the mayor's drink if he's being lecherous. You make exceptions. But not often. By noon, the saloon's half cleaned, and the girls are rotating downstairs, like slow-moving roses in corsets and frustration. The piano's out of tune, and the player is missing a thumb from last month's bar fight. But he manages a ragged tune anyway. You smile at him. He spits in a cup and winks. Romance. Frontier style. You walk past a mirror near the stairs and see your reflection for the first time today. You pose. The lines are deeper than yesterday. The rouge can only cover so much. But the stare is the same knife edge, sharp and cold, as the silver you keep hidden in the sugar tin behind the bar. You tap your temple twice. A habit. Good luck. Or maybe just superstition. You glance at the wanted posters nailed to the wall. One of them looks a lot like you 10 years younger. Hair darker. Softer. You ignore it. Upstairs again. Your bed is still unmade. You think about crawling back under the covers and pretending the last decade was a fever dream. But then the piano player starts coughing deep. Rattling. Consumptive. You sigh. There's no rest for madams. Just delayed collapse. You settle into the rocker near the window and light a cigarette. The smoke curls like a slow curse over your shoulder. You've made it farther than most, and you've buried enough of them to know the odds. Historians still argue whether frontier women like you were entrepreneurs, outlaws, or something grayer in between. The truth, you were all of it. And as the desert sun climbs higher, and the first customer of the day stumbles through the door looking for whiskey and warmth, you stand again, spine straight, eyes tired, hands steady. You've got a saloon to run, and no one's going to do it for you. You're still wiping crusted bourbon off the front counter when the door slams open like a shotgun blast again. You don't flinch. The man who stumbles in is new. Too clean. Too eager. He's got the look of someone who thinks the West owes him something. Probably because he read dime novels on the train. Poor soul. You give him until Thursday. He's dripping sweat and ambition, clutching a letter that he probably can't read properly, and asking if this is the establishment run by Miss Lucille. That's you? Technically, though only your girls call you that, and only when they're not cursing you. To the town, you're just the woman upstairs. To the sheriff, that problem. To yourself, it changes by the hour. The man says he wants work, says he's a good bartender. You say, "Pour me a gin sour." He fumbles it. You hand him a mop. If he survives 3 nights without being stabbed or catching something incurable, maybe you'll teach him how to stock the till. Maybe. Behind you, the swinging doors creak again, and in walks a girl you've never seen before. She's rail thin, wearing boots too big for her, and carrying a single bundle wrapped in a floral bedsheet. You don't need to ask. You can already smell the desperation. You gesture to the back room and follow her in. The parlor isn't much lace curtains, a threadbare settee, and an old portrait of someone's grandmother that came with the building. You sit across from her, watching how she doesn't touch the tea you offer. You ask the usual name, age, what she's running from. She lies about all three. You hire her anyway. You know what the town says, that you lure girls in and chew them up. But the truth is, most of them come pre-chewed. All you do is give them something to wear besides rags, and a room with a lock on the inside. You take her upstairs and give her the small room at the end of the hall. No one else wants it. It's too close to the chimney and smells like ash. But it has a mirror and a bolt. She clutches her bundle like it contains gold. More likely a pair of shoes and a Bible. Maybe a photograph of someone who didn't make it. Back downstairs. You scan the room. 3 of your regulars are slumped in booths, 1 snoozing, 1 drooling, 1 eyeing your newest hire like she's meat. You catch his gaze and arch an eyebrow. He looks away. He knows better. You check your books next. The ledger is stained with whiskey and blood from 2 nights ago, when you used it to slap a cheat across the jaw. Still, your numbers are neat. You count the coins twice. You've been short before. Sometimes the sheriff taxes you unofficially. Sometimes a girl runs off with a week's take. But the math still adds up. Just barely. Out front, the town is waking up. Dust kicks up with each wagon. The blacksmith hammers away at something crooked and hot. Across the street, the general store puts out another help-wanted sign. Though everyone knows it's just for show, no one wants to work for that wife-beater. Even your girls have standards. Speaking of which, your best earner Pearl shows up late. Smelling of peppermint and sin. She kisses your cheek and drops a coin purse in your hand. Heavy. You don't ask questions. She doesn't offer answers. That's why you keep her. She's got a mouth like a preacher's nightmare and legs that have bankrupted entire cattle drives. But she's tired. Too. You can see it in the way she leans just a little too long on the railing. You wonder how much longer she'll stay. You wonder how much longer you'll stay. A few hours later, you're elbow deep in dirty linens, scrubbing blood out of pillowcases and muttering about oxblood velvet being a terrible decorating decision. One of the girls offers to help, but you wave her off. She's already limping. You know how hard it is to work with a bruised rib. Better you do the laundry today. Outside, a stagecoach rolls by. You pause to watch. Inside, behind lace curtains, is a woman in white gloves and a hat worth more than your monthly profits. She stares out, unmoved, until she sees your saloon. Then she pulls the curtain shut. You laugh. There's an hour before sundown, and you're rearranging the whiskey crates behind the bar. You spot a bottle of absinthe that someone must have smuggled in from San Francisco. You didn't order it. You tuck it behind the gin. For emergencies only. You hear a commotion near the stairs and find one of your girls, Tilly, arguing with a man holding a bouquet of wilted roses. He says he's in love. She says he's drunk. Both are probably true. You take the roses, hand him a glass of water, and walk him to the door. When he asks why love always hurts, you smile and say, because it's contagious. He doesn't get it, but he leaves quietly. Back inside, you toss the flowers into a cracked vase and think about how often men say they love you when they're half dead with liquor. It used to mean something. Now it just means you'll probably be cleaning puke out of velvet tomorrow. A knock at your office door. It's the mayor's assistant again. asking for the usual donation to keep the preacher from shouting too loudly this Sunday. You hand him $5 and a cigar. He pretends not to notice the pistol on your desk. You pretend not to notice. The handkerchief in his pocket is monogrammed with one of your girl's initials. By evening, the saloon is dressed up again, lamps lit, piano wheezing. The bar wiped down with something that smells vaguely of lemons. The new bartender, what's his name again, is managing not to break anything. One of the girls has hemmed her skirt an inch too short. You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. Tips are better that way. You step out onto the porch for a breath of night air. The desert sky is a velvet curtain. Stars pricked through like sewing pins. Somewhere, a coyote howls. Somewhere closer, a man curses as he stubs his toe on the hitching post. You lean on the rail, exhale slow, and feel the weight of the day settle in your bones. This job, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's bookkeeping with bullets, hospitality with broken teeth. But it's yours, and as the lamps flicker, the piano stutters back to life, and another night begins. You straighten your back, adjust your bodice, and walk inside. You're sitting in your back office trying to thread a needle by lamplight when you hear another knock at the front, this time followed by a cough that says, "I don't want trouble, but I bring it anyway." You set the needle down. It's time for interviews. Hiring girls in the Wild West isn't like hiring clerks or housemaids. It's closer to taming wild animals while pretending you don't smell fear. The girl at the door is barely 18. Skin too pale for this climate. Wrapped in a blue shawl that's clearly not hers. You ask where she's from, and she says, "Back east," like it's a place and not 1,000 different nightmares. Her hands are cracked from factory work, or possibly worse, and her eyes don't blink enough. You ask if she has any experience. She lies. You nod. Everyone does. There's a second girl sitting on your parlor chaise, chewing licorice and inspecting her split ends like she owns the place. She's got city in her, maybe Chicago, maybe St. Louis, and you can already tell she's going to be trouble. Not the kind that gets you killed. The kind that throws a bottle at your mirror and then makes you laugh so hard you forget what you were mad about. You ask for a name. She grins. "Ruby," she says. Though it's probably not. You take them both. Not because you need more mouths to feed or more egos to wrangle, but because if you don't take them, someone else will, and that someone won't be as kind or nearly as dangerous. You explain the rules: no theft, no drugs without permission, no men upstairs, unless they pay in advance. They nod, and you hand them dresses that almost fit. Later, they'll cut and re-stitch them into something closer to armor. Women out here don't wear fabric. They wear warning signs. You step back behind the bar to pour yourself a drink. It's not even noon. Doesn't matter. You pretend it's iced tea as you sip gin from a teacup. The preacher's son watches you from a corner table. Cheeks red. He's pretending to read a Bible, which is upside down. You don't call him out. Not yet. Outside, you hear shouting, then glass breaking. You sigh. Turns out, a man from the mining camp has followed your new blonde girl here. He's drunk, sweaty, and clutching a telegram, like it's proof of ownership. "She's mine." He slurs, swinging a bottle with one hand and a marriage certificate with the other. You step between them before he finishes the sentence. "I don't care if she's your mother." You say. You raise a hand in here. and you'll be drinking through a straw for life." He laughs. You don't. The bartender, new kid, is still too fresh looks to you. Wide-eyed. You nod. He fetches the sheriff. The sheriff doesn't come. So you fetch your own justice. You tell the piano man to play louder, and the girls to keep dancing. And then you haul the miner out by the ear. He swings. You duck. He hits the wall. His nose is leaking. And your patience is not. You drag him to the alley and leave him there, face down in the dust, with just enough coin in his boot to get out of town. Back inside, the blonde is shaking. You hand her a cigarette and sit beside her until her hands stop twitching. "Thank you," she whispers. You shrug. "Next time." Stab him in the thigh. You weren't joking. Later that evening, the saloon fills up like a kettle at boil. Cowboys, prospectors, cattlemen, each one sweating, shouting, and dropping silver on your tables. The piano thumps to life. The air smells like whiskey, pine tar, and fried onions from the kitchen. You scan the crowd and note who's smiling too hard, who's pretending to be poor, and who's holding a knife beneath their vest. A well-dressed man in a silk waistcoat approaches. Banker. Probably. Maybe railroad. He orders a French brandy and tries to impress you with a speech about investing in expansion. You nod along, then ask if he's ever cleaned vomit out of lace upholstery. He hasn't. You lose interest. The redhead pearl takes the banker off your hands. She's good at reading men like ledgers. One glance, and she knows how much they've got, how much they'll spend, and how much they'll regret it in the morning. She gives you a wink as she leads him to the back room. You give her a silent nod. That's how trust works out here, unsaid. And always under review. Upstairs, one of the girls is crying. You find her sitting on the floor of the dressing room. Mascara dripping. Fingers bloodied from a corset hook. She says she can't do it anymore. You don't ask what it is. The answer's always the same. You light a match and offer her your cigarette. She takes it with shaking hands. "I miss my mom," she says. "Did she teach you how to sew, you ask?" "Yeah." "Good. Stitch that seam, or it'll fall off mid-dance." She laughs barely, and you know she'll last another week at least. You head back to your room for 5 minutes of quiet. The hallway smells like perfume and floor polish, and your door creaks like an old injury. You sit on the edge of your bed, toes just touching the floor, and let your arms fall limp. Every joint acts. Every muscle is tired. But this is the job. You stare at your bedside table. 3 things sit there always: a pearl hairpin, a folding knife, and a pocket watch from someone long gone. The watch doesn't tick anymore, but you wind it anyway. Routine is important. So is remembering. Historians still argue whether saloon madames were villains or victims, profiteers or protectors. You think they're all missing the point. You were architects of survival, of community, of something dangerously close to hope. Every girl you've hired had her name written off by someone else. You just gave them a pen. Back downstairs. The mood is shifting. The music gets faster. The boots stomp harder. Someone's lost big at poker and thinks yelling will help. You slide behind the bar again. Watching. Always watching. And just as you're pouring a man his 3rd glass of watered-down bourbon, he leans in and says, "You ever think about quitting this life?" You blink once. Then you smile slow. Every damn morning. You're spooning lard into a chipped porcelain jar and mixing in rose oil with a splintered comb when the new girl stumbles in, half-dressed and confused about where her corset hooks are supposed to go. You take one look at her and sigh, not out of annoyance, but because every girl has to learn the physics of survival the hard way. You gesture for her to sit on the stool while you fix the mess. The corset's too tight, cutting off breath and dignity, and she's laced it backward. You show her how to wrap it flat, how to sit in it without fainting, how to use it as both seduction and shield. While you work, she asks, why you bother with rouge when your face is already pretty enough? You raise an eyebrow and point to the mirror. This isn't about pretty. This is war paint. You teach her the house method rouge made from crushed beetle shells, mixed with grease and a little lamp soot for contour. It doesn't come off easy, which is the point. The kohl is homemade too, rubbed along lashes with a wet fingertip. Perfume. You pass her a small bottle. It smells like lilac and something darker. Gunpowder. You say, just a drop. She laughs, coughs, and then dabs it behind her ears anyway. You don't tell her that scent once belonged to a woman who never made it back from a night shift. That's a lesson for later. Outside the dressing room, the saloon is groaning to life. The piano man plays something slow and swampy, and the air is already thick with cigar smoke and cologne. You can hear boots pacing the floorboards, silver coin clinking, the occasional bark of laughter edged with threat. You pin your hair up in spirals, twist in two tiny knives, where most women would place a ribbon, and step out to inspect the floor. 3 new customers tonight, judging by the way they scan the room. Eyes too fast, hands too clean, card sharks or con men. Doesn't matter. You make a note to warn the bartender to keep them dry until they buy something worth drinking. You grab Pearl and tell her to keep an eye on them. She chuckles, flicks open her fan, and saunters over. You don't worry about her. She once broke a man's finger with a boot heel and finished her dance before anyone noticed. One of your quieter girls is stationed at the bar, smiling like she means it. She's wearing a sapphire blue dress that makes her eyes pop like shotgun shells. You made her switch from red after the 3rd fight broke out. Blue calms the nerves. Or so they say. Historians still argue whether color psychology mattered in saloons, but you've run the experiments firsthand. As the room fills, you do your rounds. You tighten a crooked sash, whisper a reminder not to take coins with bite marks, and adjust a stocking with more fabric than most shirts. Then you stop at the bar and take a long look at yourself in the brass-rimmed mirror. The light is golden, not flattering, but forgiving. You look dangerous. That's what counts. It's nearing midnight when a man with a long coat and eyes like dried tar strolls in. He doesn't sit, doesn't order, just leans against the frame and watches. You know the type: bounty hunter. Maybe. Or someone sent to collect a debt. You meet his stare and hold it. He nods. Once. You nod back. This is frontier diplomacy. You'll find out who he's after soon enough. The new girl, Ruby, has taken to the crowd like a shark to water. She's funny, sharp, and has the kind of laugh that makes men forget they came in with morals. But you catch her pocketing a gold tooth off a passed-out gambler. You don't say anything. Not yet. Everyone gets one mistake. In the hallway upstairs, your older girls are giving the new ones tips how to fake a smile, how to cry in reverse, How to slip out of a man's grasp without breaking the illusion. One of them demonstrates how to flirt while lifting a wallet. You pretend not to see. Downstairs, a customer starts singing. Loud. Off-key. Swaying like a cracked metronome. The room joins in. Half sincere. Half soused. You smile. Nights like these are rare. Nobody bleeding. Nobody breaking. Even the rats are too full to scurry. You take a seat at the corner booth. The one with the loose floorboard you use to stash your real earnings and stretch your legs. Your boots are scuffed. Your corset digs into your ribs. And your spine is about ready to mutiny. But for 5 blessed minutes, it's almost peaceful. Then someone screams. It's a sharp sound. Not fear, more fury. You spring up. It's Ruby. Standing on a chair, pointing a pistol the size of a sewing kit at the bounty hunter. He's holding a knife. There's blood, just a trickle on her arm. You move fast. Faster than you have in years. You knock the pistol down with one hand, slap the knife from the man's grip with a cracked bottle in the other. Chair, tumble. A table flips. One man ducks under a piano bench. Another starts clapping, thinking it's a show. Everyone out. You shout. Voice, low, but deadly. They obey. Even the piano man stops mid-note. You drag the hunter outside by his collar, past the gawkers, and slam him against the wall. Who sent you, you hiss. He spits. Not for you. For her. She killed a marshal back in Wichita. You glance at Ruby through the window. Her face is blank. Ice cold. You believe him. Still. You lean in and whisper. Then maybe you shouldn't have missed. And then you let him go. Not because he deserves it, but because there's no room for justice in this town unless you build it yourself. Back inside, you sit Ruby down and pour her a drink. Neither of you speaks. You don't ask what happened in Wichita. She doesn't offer. You both know the code. The past doesn't matter unless it kicks down your door. You help her clean the cut with gin and a torn sleeve. She winces, but doesn't flinch. Then she says, quietly, "You gonna send me away?" You shake your head. No, darling, but you'll sleep with one eye open from now on. She nods. You nod. And just like that, she's yours. The sun isn't even up yet. But you're already elbow deep in arguments over whiskey barrels. The delivery wagon arrived at dawn, rumbling in with 2 scrawny mules and a man who smells like axle grease and broken promises. You squint at the invoice. It says, 4 barrels bourbon, 2 crates, gin, 1 cask Tennessee, sour. You sniff the bourbon and nearly gag. Either the barrel's been reused since the Mexican-American War, or he's added turpentine for extra kick. You say nothing. Instead, you casually uncork a jug, take a ladle, and pour a shot for the delivery man. Go on. You say, drink. He hesitates. You smile. That's enough. We'll take 2 barrels and 1 crate. You say, and you'll knock off 15%. Because if I find another dead rat floating in the gin, I'm sending your molars back to your mama in an envelope. He grumbles, but nods. Deal struck. You've watered down worse before. Out here, the frontier palate's more forgiving than you'd think. If it burns and doesn't blind them immediately, the customers call it top shelf. You call it Tuesday. You haul the barrels into the cellar yourself, because your bartender has vanished again, and the new girl claims she's afraid of rats. You wedge the good stuff behind a crate labeled matches and the watered junk near the stairs. You keep one flask of the real thing tucked in your boot. For emergencies, or bribing the mayor. By the time you're back upstairs, your shirt's soaked and your corset's pinching like a jealous wife. The saloon is waking up. The piano man's banging keys like he's mad at them. And the mirror behind the bar has gained another crack. You note it. Add it to the list. Everything breaks here eventually. Glass. Furniture. People. You just try to keep the damage cosmetic. The sheriff wanders in around noon, chewing tobacco like he's owed something. He leans on the counter and grins with a mouthful of yellowed teeth. Heard there was a disturbance last night. He drawls. You don't blink. There's always a disturbance. This is a saloon, not a prayer circle. He chuckles. Then eyes the cash box. You sigh and hand him his cut $3 silver and a bottle of your weakest bourbon, which you're pretty sure is just brown water and regret. You ever consider running a respectable place, he asks. You lean in close. You ever consider brushing your teeth? He laughs again, louder this time, and saunters out. He won't remember the insult, but he'll remember the bribe. Later, you find Ruby and Pearl in the storeroom, trying to relabel a jug of gin as French brandy. Pearl thinks it'll double the price if the label looks fancy enough. You nod. Add a foreign accent when you serve it. You say bonjour with a drawl. They giggle. You don't. You're already calculating the markup. The bartender finally reappears, eyes bloodshot. Shirt buttoned wrong, and you hand him a mop before he can speak. He groans. You raise one eyebrow. He gets to work. You head upstairs to check on the rooms. You pass the second-floor landing, where the wallpaper peels like sunburnt skin. One of the girls has scrawled a message into the plaster. He said, "He loved me." Below it, "Then he stole my boots." You shake your head. Could have been worse. At least she kept her life. You open the last room on the left. Inside, you find a half-eaten biscuit, a spilled bottle of hair tonic, and a man snoring with his boots on. He's not supposed to be here. He wasn't on the ledger. You nudge him with your boot. Nothing. You try again. This time harder. He snorts awake, flailing like a stunned piglet, and stares up at you with eyes like wet gravel. "Ma'am," he croaks. "You paid, you ask." Paid what? Wrong answer. You drag him by the collar to the stairs. He protests. You remind him of the house rule, no payment. No pillow. Halfway down, his boots catch a step, and he tumbles the rest of the way. He groans from the floor like a wounded buffalo. No one blinks. The piano man doesn't even miss a beat. You pour yourself a drink and take a moment to enjoy the calm before evening. It never lasts long, but you savor it like dry bread plain. But necessary, that night. The place is fuller than a preacher's promise. A cattle drive came through, and the cowhands have paid burning holes in their pockets. They buy drinks like the liquor's going extinct. You raise the prices. No one notices. You lean on the bar and watch as one of your girls, young, nervous, new, tries to dance with a man who keeps stepping on her skirt. You walk over, cut in, and teach her how it's done. A light sway, a low step, hand grazing his hip just enough to distract, not provoke. The room watches. You smile like you don't know. The man says, "Ain't you a little old for this?" You whisper in his ear. "Ain't you a little stupid for breathing?" He laughs, good-natured. Lucky for him. You twirl away, leave the floor, and take a shot of something that smells like regret and tastes worse. You pass the preacher's son on your way back. He's holding a Bible again. It's still upside down. You don't say a word. In the corner, two men argue over a card game. One accuses the other of cheating. You watch their hands. No weapons drawn yet. One slams his fist. And coins scatter. You step in, pick up the largest coin, and ask whose it is. Neither speaks. You pocket it. Disputa resolved. You say. They sit down. A woman in traveling clothes enters. Asks if you're hiring. She looks older. Maybe 35. With a scar across her chin and a voice like sandpaper. You say yes? New questions. Anyone brave enough to ask you for a job in the middle of a brawl probably deserves one. At closing time, you're counting silver with sore hands and a brain full of numbers. You think of all the times you've nearly left on a stagecoach. On foot. With nothing but a knife and a dream. And every time, something pulls you back. Maybe it's the place. Maybe it's the girls. Maybe it's the fact that if you left, there'd be no one here to stop the whole place from burning down. Historians still argue whether saloon madames empowered women or exploited them. You think they've missed the real question. Out here, there are only two types of women, the ones who get crushed, and the ones who learn how to run the press. And tonight, you're still running it. The first chair goes flying before sundown. You hear the crash from the back hallway as you're trying to sew a button back onto your only decent vest. The one without the whiskey stain shaped like Nevada. You sigh, stab the needle into the fabric like it insulted your mother, and march into the saloon, ready to break up whatever testosterone circus has just kicked off. Two men are squared off by the poker table. Fists clenched, red-faced, breath like chimney smoke. One is a cattleman, you can tell, from the dust baked into his cuffs and the faint smell of cow dung. The other's a railroad foreman, with hands like beef shanks and a fancy hat he clearly didn't earn. I saw him. Swap the card, the cattleman shouts, pointing a shaking finger. You wouldn't know a card from a corn cob. The other growls. The dealer, a girl named Jessie, who once faked a seizure to escape a jealous fiancé, looks bored. You raise a finger and whistle. Loud. The room freezes. Even the piano forgets what key it was in. You walk over. Pick up the accused card. Hold it to the light. It's been marked barely a faint nick on the edge. Clever. Too clever for the cattleman. Not clever enough for you. You smack it on the table. No cheating in this house unless I approve it. You say, now apologize or finish it outside. They grumble. But neither wants to lose teeth tonight. They mutter apologies, grab their hats, and slink off to stew in cheaper whiskey. The crowd lets out a breath. The piano resumes. Tentatively, you rub your temples. Saloons aren't bars. They're war zones with chandeliers. You duck behind the counter and pour yourself something clean, meaning you can still see through it and take a swig. That's when the preacher's wife marches in. She's dressed like she's going to a funeral for someone she hated. Bonnet pinned with righteous fury. Cheeks flushed with divine rage. She carries a placard that reads House of Sin and slaps it onto your door like it's holy water. You lean on the frame and light a cigarette. Afternoon. Mary. You purr. You're corrupting the town's morals. She snaps. Which morals? The ones that cheat at poker, or the ones that visit me on Thursdays after choir rehearsal? That shuts her up. But only briefly. She huffs, gathers her skirt, and retreats, leaving behind a gaggle of women with signs, shouting about virtue and fire. Inside, your girls peek out from behind the curtains, like it's a stage play. Pearl blows a kiss through the window. Someone outside faints. You take down the sign and toss it into the fire. Just another reminder that in this town, everyone sins. You're just more efficient about it. Later, you find one of the girls in tears. Tilly, the youngest, curled on the back stairwell, with her knees tucked up and mascara running like ink on wet paper. She won't say why. You don't push. You just sit beside her. Offer a sip from your flask. And hum something soft under your breath. Eventually, she speaks. He said I wasn't worth a silver dime. You nod. That's funny. I saw him spend 3 of them just to sit next to you. She laughs through her tears. Wipes her nose with her sleeve. You pat her shoulder. Then tell her to wash her face. Reapply her rouge. And charge double next time. Confidence. Like whiskey. Burns a little going down, but steadies the hands. Evening brings the regular chaos. A stagecoach arrives. Dusty and late. Dropping off 3 prospectors and a woman in a yellow shawl who walks like she's being chased by memories. One of the prospectors tries to flirt with Ruby, who tells him she only speaks French. He stumbles off, muttering something about baguettes. The night spins on. Someone knocks over the spittoon. Someone else starts singing "Oh, Susanna" with a mouthful of beans. A drunk falls asleep under the card table. The bartender accidentally serves gin to a man who's allergic to juniper and spends the next hour fanning his swollen tongue. You handle all of it. You always do. But it's the silence after that sticks with you. After last call, after the piano man's gone upstairs with a bottle of cough syrup and the girl with the nervous laugh, after the chairs are upended and the floor's been mopped with something vaguely resembling soap, after everyone's retreated to their corners, some to dream, some to mourn, you sit alone in the stillness. The saloon at night is a different beast. Quieter, but not peaceful. It creaks. It shifts. It remembers. You light a lantern and walk the floor, checking each door, each window latch. You pause at the base of the staircase. Hand resting on the rail, polished by years of longing, rage, and too many boots. You climb slowly, knees aching, spine crackling like old parchment. You stop at room 5. The bloodstain's mostly faded, but you see it anyway. Your first love bled out there. Too young, too stubborn, too full of impossible promises. You press your palm against the door frame. Just for a second. Just enough to remind yourself that survival means forgetting some things and guarding others with your life. Back in your room, you sit at your vanity, brush in hand, counting strokes you don't need to make. Outside, a coyote jips. Inside, a floorboard groans. You set the brush down. Historians still argue whether saloon madames like you were ruthless businesswomen or surrogate mothers to the broken. The answer doesn't matter to you. You just know that when something goes wrong in this town, when a girl's been hurt, when a man's gone too far, when justice forgets to show up, it's your door they knock on. And even when your hands shake from exhaustion, you always open it. You're halfway through scraping dried beer off the backroom floorboards with a butter knife when the mayor stumbles in wearing yesterday's cravat and a face full of apologies. He smells like cigar ash and sweat, and he's clutching his hat like it's a newborn kitten. You already know what this is. May have lost my salary advance. In a misunderstanding. At the card table. You keep scraping. Was this before or after you tried to inspect the wallpaper in room 3 without paying? He clears his throat. Entirely unrelated. You stand slowly. How much? He winces. 40 silver. And I was wondering if I might settle it with goodwill. You stare at him for a long moment, then glance toward the piano, where Pearl is playing a lazy waltz, with one foot on the stool and one eye on the mayor. She gives you the tiniest shake of her head. Right. No favors today. You point at the mop. Goodwill starts by scrubbing the back hall. To his credit, he does it. Badly. But thoroughly. And by the time he's finished, you've pocketed the 10 silver he dropped without noticing, and earned the satisfaction of watching him blister his hands on a broom handle. A win-win. Later, you sit down to write in your ledger. This isn't just a book of numbers, it's your diary. Your courtroom. Your list of sins and survival. Every coin has a story. Every name has a warning written in invisible ink. You're the only one who can read it. You note who's paid, who's overdue, and who needs a gentle reminder involving a hammer. One entry catches your eye. E. Cartwright. Unpaid 3 nights. You frown. That's not like her. You find her upstairs, curled on a chaise in her slip, staring blankly at the wallpaper like it's whispering secrets. You crouch beside her. What happened? She blinks once. I dreamed my mother came to visit. Said I smelled like tobacco and fear. You don't laugh. You just hand her a cup of water. Lace it with a drop of laudanum, and sit beside her until she stops shaking. Sometimes, being a madame means knowing when to threaten a man. Sometimes, it means knowing when to let a girl cry into your lap. By mid-afternoon, the saloon is strangely quiet. Only a few men inside playing slow poker. Drinking in silence, waiting for the heat to pass. The piano player's tuning strings, wincing with every twang. You hear thunder rumble in the distance. Storm's coming. You can feel it in your ankles. One of your girls, Darla, the one with the chipped tooth and heart of gold, asks if she can take the evening off. Says there's a man who wants to buy her dinner without expecting anything after. You arch an eyebrow. Does he have all his teeth? She nods. Knows your name. She grins. He even spelled it right. Fine. Be back by midnight. And take your knife. She hugs you tightly. Quickly. Like she's afraid it'll be the last time. You don't say it out loud. But you feel it too. By sundown, the wind is picking up. Dust whips through the saloon doors and curls across the floor like ghostly tumbleweeds. You tell the bartender to nail up the back shutters and check the oil in the lamps. He nods and disappears for 20 minutes. Returns with a black eye and no explanation. You don't ask. The storm breaks just after dark. Lightning slashes the sky. Thunder shakes the rafters. And rain pours down like God's trying to wash the sin off the desert. Good luck with that. Inside, the saloon becomes a sanctuary. Strangers huddle near the stove. Girls wipe down the windows. You light every lamp, every candle, every scrap of oil-soaked rag you can find. Light pushes back the shadows. but not the stories they hold. Pearl starts telling ghost tales. One, about a woman in white, who walks the hallway upstairs with a broken neck and a grudge. Another about the gambler who cheated death, then got caught by your accountant instead. You don't say it, but you've seen shadows move in this place, heard whispers in rooms long empty. If ghosts exist, they drink here too. A boy bursts in, soaked through, face white as flour, says his paw's fallen from a horse, leg twisted like a pretzel. You grab your coat and a bottle of whiskey and follow him into the storm. Pearl comes too, clutching gauze and a kitchen knife. You make it to the ranch house by moonlight and lamplight. Find the man screaming on the floor, bone sticking out like a snapped broomstick. You pour whiskey into his mouth, shove a stick between his teeth, and pull. The sound will live in your memory longer than it should. Pearl binds the leg tight. The man passes out. You tuck the boy into bed with a piece of fudge from your coat pocket and tell him, "It's going to be all right." You don't know if that's true. Back at the saloon, you strip off your wet clothes and toss them by the fire, wrapping yourself in an old shawl that smells like cedar and secrets. You pour yourself something warm. The girls are all still awake, curled in corners, talking low. The storm rattles the windows. You join them. They're telling stories, real ones this time. Ruby's talking about the time she sang for a Union general and nearly got shot for stealing his comb. Tilly's remembering the sound her daddy made when he left the porch forever. You add one of your own about the time you were 13, hiding under a train car with a bottle of kerosene and dreams of becoming a schoolteacher. They laugh. You laugh. It's soft. Not happy. Exactly. But real. Historians still argue whether saloon madames held power or were just one layer above the rest. But in this moment, huddled in stormlight with your girls and your ghosts, you feel something closer to priesthood. You bless the broken. You bury the lost. You know everyone's sins by name and face. And you offer a kind of salvation not pure, not perfect, but practical. The only kind that matters out here. The storm begins to ease. A few girls drift off to bed. You stay a little longer, staring at the flames, listening to the soft ticking of the grandfather clock and the creak of the wind dying down. You finish your drink, douse the last lamp, and climb the stairs. Tomorrow, we'll bring more storms. You'll be ready. There's a chair tied to a beam with rope and a man slumped in it, snoring gently. You didn't put him there, but your girls did. And you're proud of the knot work. You sip your coffee and take in the scene, blood drying beneath his nose. One boot missing. His left hand twitching with the last shreds of whatever fight he thought he had. Cora leans against the wall beside you, arms crossed, chewing the corner of a biscuit like it's vengeance. He slapped Maggie. She says simply, "That's enough for you." Slapping one of your girls is the kind of mistake that doesn't get made twice. You step forward. Lift the man's chin with the end of your boot. You have two options. You say, you apologize, and leave, with both kneecaps. Or we make a new seat out of your spine. He groans something unintelligible. You give him the benefit of the doubt. It might have been sorry, and untie one wrist. The girls do the rest. He stumbles out into the morning light, like a dog that finally understands the fence is electric. You turn to Cora. Next time, use the softer rope. That one leaves splinters. She winks. You settle into the velvet booth in the corner. Ledger open on the table. Coffee in one hand. pencil in the other. A girl upstairs is practicing scales on a fiddle someone found behind the wardrobe last week. It's painfully out of tune. You let her continue anyway. There's no such thing as too much noise in a house like this. Quiet means something's gone missing. The new girl, Eliza, is serving drinks now, finally brave enough to balance 2 glasses without flinching at every raised voice. She smiles more, flirts better, even learned how to palm tips without seeming greedy. She still cries sometimes, but not as much. Last night she told you remind her of her aunt. You didn't ask if that was a compliment. A shipment arrives around noon. Dried goods. Lemons rare as pearls out here. And a fresh deck of playing cards that doesn't smell like pipe smoke and failure. You sign the receipt and tip the delivery boy with a coin and a sharp warning not to sneak into the kitchen again. Last time he tried to steal cornbread and nearly lost a finger to the cook's ladle. You take inventory: 2 sacks of flour, 3 of cornmeal, a jug of molasses, and exactly 1 bar of soap, the good kind. You break it into 4 pieces and lock them in a drawer. You've learned that hygiene, like honesty, needs rationing in a place like this. By mid-afternoon, it's time for court. That's what the girls call it when they bring disputes to you for judgment. Today's case, Maggie says Ruby stole her hairbrush. Ruby says Maggie lost it gambling. Pearl says they both should be fined for being this annoying before dinner. You rule that Maggie gets her brush back. Ruby gets a warning. And Pearl gets a drink for her trouble. Fair enough. Later, you find time to patch the tear in the billiard table with a scrap of red velvet from an old curtain. It's not elegant, but it works. Everything in the saloon is stitched together with desperation and stubbornness, including you. A letter arrives. No stamp, just your name scrawled in ink that looks nervous. You open it upstairs. Away from curious eyes. Inside a single line, "He's coming." You stare at it for a long time. No signature. No date. Just that. He. You know which he. And suddenly, your heart, which hasn't flinched in years, skips once. Just once. You burn the letter in the lamp flame. Watch the ash curl. Like a promise you never kept. Then you grab the pistol from your drawer and check the chamber. Still full. Still clean. You slide it back and return to work. Because that's what you do. Always. Evening falls hard. The saloon is packed. A man named Lyle is losing money like it's on fire. And your piano man has decided tonight's the night to experiment with jazz. Whatever that is. You pour drinks. Wink at the right times. Slap the wrong hands. And generally keep the peace with the grace of a rattlesnake in a silk bonnet. The mayor's back. This time, with his wife in tow. She refuses to look anyone in the eye. He pretends you're old friends. You charge him triple for a bottle of wine and smile as he pays it. Sweating, you slip upstairs and check on the girls. Eliza is combing her hair in front of the mirror, humming some tune from back east. Tilly's already asleep with her boots still on. Pearl is darning a stocking, while planning someone's downfall out loud. You check your pistol again. At midnight, a shadow slips in through the side door. You don't see a face, just a shape. Familiar. You feel the cold thread of recognition crawl down your spine. You move behind the bar, hand resting on the hidden drawer where you keep the shotgun, just in case. But the figure turns, tips a hat, and keeps walking. Not him. Not yet. Still. You don't sleep much that night. Historians still argue whether frontier saloons were bastions of depravity or necessary pillars of society. But they always leave out the ones who held it all together. The ones who kept books, broke bones, brewed tea, and buried secrets in the backyard when necessary. You're not just the madam. You're the judge, jury, barkeep, seamstress, and sometimes surgeon. You're the thin thread between chaos and collapse. And tonight, like every night, you hold the line. The piano man's missing again. That's the first thing you notice when you wake up well. That, and the sun, poking through your curtains like a nosy neighbor. You roll out of bed with the grace of a dropped sack of flour and pull on your boots before even washing your face. There's something about the silence downstairs that prickles your skin. It's too quiet. Like the building's holding its breath, you step into the saloon barefoot and scowl. The piano's wide open. Keys, still sticky from spilled bourbon. But the stool is gone. Again. Third time this month. Someone probably used it as a weapon, or a ladder, or both. You make a note to check behind the smokehouse. Last time it turned up there with a raccoon inside. The regulars are already trickling in. The ones who pretend they come for the coffee, but really come because nowhere else in town will tolerate their stories. You nod at old Buck, who thinks you're his cousin, and wave off the undertaker, who only ever asks about the color of your drapes. Then you climb the stairs, 2 at a time, and pound on the piano man's door. No answer. You let yourself in and find him curled up in a blanket nest. One arm wrapped around a jug of cough syrup and the other around a stuffed rabbit someone left behind years ago. His hair is a tangle of straw and regret. Time to play. You say, I got gout. You got excuses. 5 minutes. He groans. But he gets up. He always does. Something about your voice. It has a way of making even the hungover sit up straight. By mid-morning, he's at the keys. Eyes bleary. Finger stiff. You massage his shoulder once, just once, and he grunts something that might have been gratitude. The music starts slow, like a drunk limping home, then picks up pace. By the time the sun hits high noon, you've got rhythm again. Downstairs, Pearl is dealing with a pair of traveling salesmen who've mistaken her for a naive barkeep. She lets them talk for 10 minutes about patented boot polish before flipping a knife from her corset and asking which boot they'd like to try it on. They pay double for their drinks and tip like gentlemen. You pass through the main room checking chairs, dusting picture frames, counting glasses. A man tries to grab your waist as you walk by. You catch his wrist mid-reach and squeeze just hard enough to make him wince. This ain't a buffet. You say. He laughs. Too loudly. Just looking. Sweetheart. You lean in. Next time, use your eyes, not your fingers. He doesn't laugh after that. In the afternoon, the tax collector visits. Not the official one, the real one. A wiry little man named Fitch, who smiles too much and keeps his hands in his pockets even when it's 110 degrees. He slides into your booth like he owns it and starts counting out invoices. You're late. He says, I'm alive. You reply, that's good enough. He grins. Business still booming. You hand him a pouch of coins and a bottle of gin with the label scratched off. He pockets both. That's the arrangement. Always has been. After he leaves, you exhale slowly. Fitch is one of the few men you can't read. You keep wondering when the day will come that he decides your tax isn't worth collecting anymore, and whether that day ends with a fire or a noose, Ruby finds you later in the dressing room with a box of cracked Rouge compacts and a jar of grease. She's holding a fiddle, like it's going to explode. "I found it under my bed," she says, "only missing 2 strings. You blink. You play." She shrugs. "My pa did. Taught me before he ran off with a horse thief." She plucks a string. It wails. You wince. She grins. "I'll learn." You believe her. If anyone in this place can pull music from a half-dead fiddle, it's Ruby. Later, the sun turns orange through the windows, and you're back behind the bar slicing lemons with a knife, so dull it could barely butter bread. Tilly sits across from you. "Nie stukt up." Eyes distant. "You think I'll ever make it out of here?" she asks softly. You don't answer right away. You slide her a lemon slice dipped in sugar. She sucks on it, face scrunching like a fist. "You can," you say, "if you want it bad enough, and if you're smart." She nods. "And if I kill the right man?" You raise an eyebrow. "Let's aim for outsmarting the right man first." Just then, the door slams open, and a man bursts in. Eyes wild. Coat flapping like he's a bat out of hell. "Where is she?" he yells. You already know who he means. You slide out from behind the bar. "Slow as honey. You'll need to be more specific." "Eliza," he growls. "That no-good liar, she's mine." The room stills. Eliza appears on the stairs. She's pale, but standing tall. "She's not yours." You say, "Not anymore." He steps forward. You draw your pistol. The sound of that click hammer cocked. Barrel steady echoes like a sermon. You've got 5 seconds to leave. You say, "Then I stop counting." He doesn't test it. He turns and storms out, muttering curses and promises you've heard 1,000 times. You exhale. Everyone in the room resumes breathing. Later, Eliza thanks you. You shake your head. You saved yourself the moment you walked in here. You tell her, "I just cleaned up the mess." Historians still argue whether saloons were centers of vice or necessary escapes, whether women like you were devils in velvet or angels with grit in their teeth. But the truth is simpler. You protect your own. And sometimes, that means drawing a pistol with your left hand while pouring gin with your right. You're in the back room balancing ledgers by candlelight. When you hear the floor creak in that particular way, it only does when someone's standing in front of the whiskey wall. Not drinking, not browsing, just standing. You don't even glance up. Instead, you take one slow breath, mark the ledger column, and draw the small pistol you keep tucked in the tea tin beneath the register. You step out quiet as a cat and see him. A wiry man with a hat too nice for his boots. He's studying the wall, not the bottles. And that's what gives him away. Nobody looks at that panel unless they know what's behind it. "You lost, you ask?" Voice casual. He turns, hands raised in mock surrender, just admiring the architecture. That architecture hides 10 years of savings and a derringer with a hair trigger. You reply, "So unless you've got a deposit to make, I'd step away." He does. You don't lower the pistol until he's gone. The hidden compartment behind the whiskey wall has served you well. Hollow wood. False back. Just deep enough to hold a canvas sack stuffed with silver. A revolver wrapped in oiled cloth. And a list of names that could get you, or half the town, killed if it ever left this room. You didn't build the stash because you're paranoid. You built it because in this town, safety isn't real. Only secrets are. You check the stash. Still there. Still whole. You add today's take. Seal the panel. And return to the floor, where everything looks ordinary again. That night, you find Eliza cleaning glasses with her apron hiked too high. You tug it down gently and hand her a new rag. She rolls her eyes. Thought it brought in more tips. Maybe. You say, but dignity's like bourbon. It works better when you don't water it down too much. She grins and gets back to it. The saloon feels slow tonight. Rain threatens again. So the regulars trickle in damp, squinting, and hungry for warmth. You light the hearth, pass out cornbread, and remind the girls not to charge the preacher's son full price. He always brings news. Tonight, he delivers. There's a marshal in town. He whispers, while you pour him cider. Says he's looking for someone. Didn't say who. You raise an eyebrow. He alone. Nope. Got a badge. A scar. And a Bible. You know the type. You do. Too well. You find Pearl upstairs brushing out her curls with one hand and counting coins with the other. She raises an eyebrow when you knock. Marshal. You say. Again she sighs. Which one? Doesn't matter. We're locking down the wall. Tighten the skirts. Hide the ledger. She nods. All business. The girls know the drill. Marshals come and go. Most leave confused. Poorer. And slightly in love. The smart ones don't come back. By the time the marshal arrives, boots polished. Eyes sharp. You're behind the bar in your favorite red velvet dress. The one that makes men forget what they were angry about and women forget to be jealous. You offer him a drink. He declines. Just here for a conversation. He says, looking for someone who might have passed through. Tall man. Thin. Scar on his neck. You shake your head. I see a lot of men. Most forgettable. I remember the rude ones. The ones who tip poorly, and the ones who try to cheat at cards. That's it. He watches you. Eyes narrowing. You run a tight ship. You smile. I run this ship. Everything else can sink. He doesn't stay long. Just enough to make everyone nervous. But before he leaves, he slides a card onto the bar. Not a business card. A tarot card. The tower. Your blood runs cold. But your smile stays warm. You slide it into your sleeve and pour yourself a double. Later. After the last man stumbles out and the piano man collapses onto his stool, you gather the girls in the back room. There's heat. You say, nothing serious yet. But eyes are on us. Pearl snorts. When are they not? Just keep your mouths shut and your ears open. And if anyone asks where the money is, tell them it's been reinvested in better wallpaper. That earns a laugh. Even Tilly giggles. Though she hasn't smiled all week. Back upstairs. You check the sugar tin. Your other stash. Still intact. You finger the folded bills. The letters from girls who made it out. The map of a route you haven't dared follow in years. You wonder what it would take for you to go. Historians still argue whether women like you kept money buried out of fear or strategy. You know it was both. Fear's just another tool in your kit. Right next to charm and a well-oiled Colt. Before bed, you write another entry in the ledger, not for money, but for memory. Today's notes, Marshall with a scar. Red dress did its job. Ruby fixed the hole in the lace curtain with a fish hook. Tilly smiled. No one died. You pour a drink. Sit in your rocker. And prop your feet on a stool. The air smells like lemon oil and wood smoke. Outside, thunder mumbles in the distance. Inside, the saloon breathes. It lives. It remembers, and so do you. You find her slumped against the vanity, with her cheek pressed to the marble, and an empty opium pipe still clutched in her fingers. The air smells like burned sugar, and perfume gone stale. Her eyes are half open but unseeing. Lashes glued together with sleep or sweat. You don't speak at first. You just kneel beside her. Check for breath there. Barely, and press a damp cloth to her forehead. Madgie. She's the strong one. The loud one. The girl who once broke a bottle over a miner's head for calling her sweetheart. And now she's here. Skin waxy and lip trembling like a child's. You sit with her for 20 minutes before she stirs. Sorry, she murmurs. You squeeze her hand. Never apologize for staying alive. The pipe is handmade. Ivory and brass. Clearly borrowed from someone with more money than teeth. You tuck it into your coat. You'll find out where it came from later. And then it'll never come back. By mid-morning, Maggie's in bed with a warm compress, a cup of broth, and 2 of the girls on watch. You leave instructions not to let her out of their sight. No more work this week. You say. She lifts a tray. I break a leg. They nod. Back downstairs, you find the opium tin seller exactly where you expected third booth from the left, pretending to play chess with an empty chair. He's got a velvet vest and a face like unwashed laundry. You sit across from him. Where'd you get it? You ask. He grins. Get what? You slam the pipe down on the board. The pawn pieces jump. The fake opponent tips over. His grin wilts. Look. You don't let him finish. You reach across, grab the collar of his shirt, and drag him so close he can smell your rage. If you ever hand one of my girls something that makes her forget her own name, I'll take your ears and use them for poker chips. He swallows. Understood. You let go. And he bolts. The pipe. You toss into the fireplace. It shrieks in the heat like something alive. Later, you take inventory again. Not of liquor or ledgers, but of your girls. You count them the way a shepherd counts sheep on a stormy night, quietly. Eyes scanning for the missing. Eliza's brushing her hair. Ruby's arguing with the cook. Pearl's folding laundry, with the efficiency of a general. All accounted for. For now, you go to your office and open a drawer lined with letters. Most are folded neatly, sealed with candle wax, and never sent. They're from the girls to mothers, to lovers, to younger selves. They barely remember. One is addressed to God. You've read it twice. It still makes your chest ache. You don't write your own letters anymore. Yours stopped the day you realized no one would be reading them. Outside, a dust storm is gathering. You can feel it in your teeth before you even hear the first rattle on the window panes. The girls rush to shutter the saloon. You check the chimney. Seal the cellar door. Hang wet cloth over the air gaps. It's a routine. You've done this before. By the time the storm hits, the skies turn the color of bad coffee, and the wind howls like a hungry wolf. Inside, the saloon is dim but warm, lit by oil lamps and huddled laughter. You hand out cards. Dice. Drinks. Ruby teaches Tilly how to cheat without being caught. Pearl reads fortunes with tea leaves and lies. Eliza hums something gentle. You make soup from canned beans and pepper, and serve it with stale bread that nobody complains about. The storm traps you in, but it also holds the world out. For one strange hour, the saloon is its own universe, sealed from every manhunt, broken heart, and sickness outside. Then the piano man plays. Not a ragtime tune or a gambler's anthem, but something slow, something aching. The girls go quiet. Even the fire pauses. You lean back in your chair, sip from your mug, and let the music coat your ribs. That night, Maggie wakes in a panic. You hear her scream before you reach the stairs. She's sweating, clawing at her sheets, eyes wild. He was here, she whispers, over and over. He was here. You sit beside her, hold her wrists, breathe slow so she'll mirror you. He's not. You say, it can't be. But I felt. You smooth her hair. I know. When she finally sleeps, you stay a while longer. You whisper a story, not for her, but for yourself. About a girl who ran from Kansas with a knife in her boot and a scar that wouldn't heal. About how she built something in the middle of nowhere, something fierce and fragile, like a glass dagger. Historians still argue whether opium was a comfort or a curse in the West, whether women who used it were victims or villains. But you've seen it. You've held the consequences. Sometimes it's escape. Sometimes it's the only way to make it to morning. And sometimes it just hurts. At sunrise, the storm dies. The wind quiets. The sand settles. You walk barefoot through the main room, past overturned chairs and drifted dust, and open the doors to the world again. The first light slips across the floor, illuminating everything, your scars, your girls, your broken piano. You stand in it for a moment, breathing it in like victory. Then you go back to work. You barely finish your morning coffee before the door bangs open and two men crash in like a pair of bulls arguing about who's dumber. They're both red-faced, mud-caked, and reeking of horse sweat and poor decisions. One is bleeding from his ear. The other's missing a hat. You don't even flinch. What now, you ask, without looking up. He cheated at dice, one yells. No, I didn't. She blinked and dropped him. The other fires back. You sigh. Motion to the girls. Get me the rope. You tie both to a chair. This has become your new favorite form of justice frontier timeout. One of the girls paints their cheeks with rouge. Another brings them teacups filled with water and a warning glare. You tell them they'll stay tied up until they shake hands and apologize. They act like that's the worst fate in the West. 30 minutes later, they do it. Grudgingly. You still keep them tied a while longer, just to let the lesson steep. After they're released, they pay their tabs in full, tip extra, and leave sheepishly. Your kind of justice may not be in the law books, but it gets results. You're not a sheriff. You're more effective. It's barely noon, and your boots already feel like prison cells. You kick them off, took your feet under a bench, and lean back against the bar, with your ledger open and a pencil behind your ear. Maggie, a little pale but upright, is sorting poker chips while humming a hymn under her breath. Ruby is counting coins and muttering to herself about how arithmetic is a scam. Pearl is peeling potatoes with the kind of intensity that suggests she's picturing someone's face. Everything's working for now. Then a man walks in, wearing a coat too fine for his shoulders. He's got a scar on his cheek and a newspaper in his pocket. You already don't like him. He introduces himself as Mr. Callahan, purveyor of culture and refinement. You resist the urge to laugh. He wants to rent out the saloon for a private event. Says it's a poetry reading. You ask who's reading. He says, me. You ask if he's ever read to an audience of cowboys with pistols and girls with knives in their garters. He blinks. I was thinking perhaps we could encourage a more civilized clientele. He says, you're in the wrong town. You reply, smiling sweetly, here. Culture means playing poker without spitting. He leaves, muttering about backward places. You wave at him with all 5 fingers but only mean one. Later, you head upstairs to check the room over the kitchen. It's the one with the broken shutter and the view of the pig pen. No one wants it. So you turn it into a makeshift sewing room. Inside are bolts of cloth, mismatched buttons, and 3 corsets waiting to be stitched back into submission. You work quietly, the needle dancing through fabric like a whisper. It's peaceful, until the pig squeals. You rush to the window and see the cook old Elmer chasing a thief with a frying pan. The man's barefoot, clutching a string of sausages like a trophy. You sigh and head downstairs, stopping only to grab your slingshot, one well-aimed pebble to the back of the head. He drops the sausages. Elmer retrieves them with pride and dusts them off like they were fine china. Crisis averted. You decide to start serving pork stew again. It sells better after drama. That evening, the piano's behaving for once. The girls are glowing. Customers are plentiful. And the coin box is heavy. You settle into your corner booth with a drink and watch the room. The laughter, the lies, the little acts of kindness that no one notices, a girl slipping extra bread to a skinny traveler, Tilly helping Buck with his coat. And then the knife fight starts. It's over a dance. As it always is, 2 cowhands both think they were promised the same waltz. You step between them without blinking. Smack one in the nose with the butt of your pistol. And tell the other he's banned from dancing unless he shaves. They stop. You're not sure why that works. But it does. You drag the bloodied one into the alley and sit him against the wall with a wet cloth and a warning. You start fights. You clean him up. You say, now, mop your mess. Inside, the girls patch the tear in the curtain with a spare garter and some thread. You keep notes in your head where repairs are needed. Which customers owe. Who's been off lately? You think about hiring another hand. A helper. Someone who can run the bar while you sleep more than 4 hours a night. But trust is a rare thing. And too many hands in your pockets leads to empty drawers. Instead, you rely on your girls. Pearl, who can handle the mayor blindfolded. Ruby, who knows 3 languages and pretends she knows none. Maggie, recovering but fierce. Elisa, the quiet one, with that blade hidden in her boot. And you, the undertaker, visits before closing, asking if you've got any new business. You shake your head. Only bruised egos tonight. He shrugs and buys a whiskey anyway. Says your place is the liveliest spot in town, even for the dead. Historians still argue whether saloon culture was sustainable or simply inevitable, whether madams were accidental leaders or intentional ones. You know this much: every night that ends with laughter and not blood is a win. Before bed, you open the window above your room. The desert smells like dust and moonlight. You sip a final drink and listen to the town creak and settle. Then you lock the doors. You tuck the pistol back beneath your pillow. You count your girls in your head, and you sleep with one eye closed and the other dreaming. You're halfway through your third cup of bitter morning coffee when the undertaker shows up again. But this time, without his usual grin. He stands in your doorway, twisting his bowler hat like it's trying to escape his grip. And when you offer him a drink, it declines. That's never good. I've got a problem, he says. You arch an eyebrow. Did the dead start talking? Worse. He mutters. They've started coming back. Turns out there's an unclaimed body behind his office. A young girl, maybe 15, dumped like trash after dark. No name. No, note. No one asking questions. Just bruises. A busted necklace. And eyes frozen. Mid-scream. He says he thought of you first. You nod. You're used to being the unofficial coroner, priest, and confessor, all rolled into one. There are worse things. You follow him to the back lot. Wrap the girl in linen yourself. Her fingers are still curled, like she was holding on to something. The air smells like copper and lavender. You stare at her for a long time and whisper, I'm sorry. Then you whisper again, I won't let this happen again. You don't know if that's a promise or a prayer. Back at the saloon. The girls know before you say a word. They feel it in the walls. In the stillness of your steps, Maggie sets down her tray without being asked. Pearl stops mid-rouge and looks at you like she knows the end of the sentence you haven't spoken yet. Ruby disappears upstairs and comes back with a shovel. New questions. Just duty. You wait until dusk. No ceremony. Just 4 women and a patch of earth behind the smokehouse where no one looks. The grave is shallow. You dig it fast. Tilly plants a cross made from a broken chair leg and a ribbon. You say nothing. Inside. The saloon is quieter than usual. No piano. Just clinking glasses and whispered conversation. Respect. Or something like it. You stand behind the bar like a statue until Pearl finally says, You can't save them all. You reply, I can damn sure try. Later, a traveling photographer stops in. Wants to take portraits, says he's documenting women of the frontier. You nearly laugh in his face. But you agree. On one condition, you pick the pose, the lighting, and the girls get veto power. He sets up in the parlor, hauling out a camera the size of a steamer trunk. The girls take turns, some shy, some bold, all curious. Maggie insists on holding a book she's never read. Ruby puts a coin between her teeth and grins like a bandit. Pearl refuses to smile at all. Let him wonder what I'm thinking. She says, Then it's your turn. You sit on the settee. Hands folded. Eyes direct. No lache. No frills. Just truth. He tries to angle the lens down. Shoot straight on. You say. He does. You never see the photo. But weeks later, a woman passes through town and stops dead in front of the frame hanging in the general store. That's her. She whispers, That's the woman who saved my sister. You never learn the details. You're scrubbing the bar when Eliza pulls you aside. She's shaking. Says she saw the same scar-faced man from weeks ago hanging around the post office, watching the saloon from across the street. You tell her you'll handle it, and you do. That night, you sit in your rocker with a shotgun across your knees. Just behind the front door, you sip coffee instead of whiskey. You don't sleep. At sunrise, you open the doors wide and let the desert in. He doesn't show. He will. You write a note in your ledger. Keep the lamp lit. Keep the girls armed. Keep the silver moving. That afternoon, the preacher himself comes knocking. Real one this time, not the son. Not the wife. The man, tall, tired, too much starch in his collar. He asks if he can speak to the girls about repentance. You lean against the doorframe and say, "You want to see repentance? Watch me scrub blood out of a floorboard." He says God forgives all. You say, "Then he better get busy." He leaves a pamphlet and a prayer. You burn the first and whisper the second under your breath, just in case. At sundown, the saloon fills up with the usual mix of dust, desperation, and half-sober delight. A cattleman proposes to Pearl after 3 drinks. She says yes, takes his ring, then gives it back when he tries to kiss her. Try again next century. She says. Ruby catches a pickpocket mid-swipe and pockets his knife. "Now, I've got 2, she says proudly. Maggie tells a story about a traveling circus she once ran away with. No one knows if it's true, but they laugh anyway. And you watch it all. Historians still argue whether saloon madames were truly in charge or just smarter prisoners. But they've never run a place like this. They've never dug a grave before dinner, posed for history before lunch, and scared off a killer before sunrise. They don't know what it takes to smile while your bones remember every name you've had to bury. You do. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. The mayor comes in with a grin that's 2 days old and breath that could ignite a barn. He flops into your velvet booth without asking, loosens his tie like he's earned the right to breathe, and slaps a gold ring onto the table. "You ever seen anything so fine?" he slurs. You pick it up. It's heavy, engraved, still warm, and definitely not his. "Who'd you steal this from?" you ask flatly. He laughs. "From a banker who lost too many hands of poker and tried to win one more with this." You spin it between your fingers. "And now you think it belongs to you." He shrugs. "Possession. Law. You know how it is." You pocket the ring and pour him the cheapest brandy you've got. Later, you'll slip the ring into your safe and send a letter to the banker in care of the Wells Fargo man. Justice here runs through back doors and quiet favors, not judges in robes. You sit across from the mayor and ask if he remembers last year's fire. It sobers up a little. You remind him how fast things burn. He nods. He understands. When he stumbles out, you exhale like you've just pulled a nail from your boot. You find Ruby upstairs, sharpening the heel of her boot with a whetstone. "Planning something?" you ask. "Always," she says. You laugh and toss her a small silver knife from your belt. "Take a spare." She catches it without blinking. By midday, the saloon's too hot, too bright, and too full of men with money, and no sense. You retreat to the kitchen where the cook Elmer, your ancient one-eyed saint, is gutting a fish with a spoon. He's humming something that might be a hymn or a threat. "I need something good for tonight," you say. "Something that fills bellies and calms nerves." He squints. "Stew with dumplings. Make it spicy." He nods and starts tossing in chilies like confetti. You wander out back and find the Wells Fargo man waiting on your porch. Tall, pressed, and always trying too hard not to stare at your neckline. He hands you a pouch of coin. 3 letters. And a rumor. There's word, out of Tucson. Someone's buying information. Names. Locations. Old debts. You nod. What do they want with me? He looks nervous. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. You slide him a coin and a wink. Keep me posted. Inside. You lock the letters in your drawer. You don't open them. Not yet. Later. One of the girls spots a familiar hat in the crowd. Long-brimmed. Sun-faded. Stitched down the side. You don't need to see the face to know who it is. You straighten your dress. Smooth your hair. And walk out, like it's any other night. He's sitting near the stove. Boots up. Arms crossed. A bounty hunter. One you used to know. One who once held your face in his hands and called you something soft. He doesn't now. Just nods. Heard you were still alive. He says, rumors get lazy in their old age. You reply, I'm not here for you. He adds, good, because I'm not here for forgiveness. He chuckles, still sharp. You lean on the table, still waiting to be impressed. He slides over a small envelope. Inside, a photo grainy. Smudged. It's you. From the photographer's visit. Below it, a note. Reward for information. Dangerous. Armed. You flip it over. What's the price? 500. You slide it back. You came all this way for that. He shrugs. Maybe I came to see if the woman who taught me how to cheat at poker still has a heart. You stare him down. She traded it for a mortgage and a pair of boots. You walk away before he can say more. He leaves before midnight. You sleep with your pistol under your pillow and the photo tucked inside your bodice. The next morning, the banker's man arrives. Quiet. Cautious. Carrying a small box and a grateful smile. I believe this is yours. You say, sliding the gold ring across the counter. He nods. There aren't many honest people left in this town. You grin. Then stop leaving valuables in the mayor's reach. He chuckles. Leaves a note and 2 gold coins on the table. You pocket one and tuck the note into your ledger. It reads, if you ever need out, say so. There's a place. You don't know where. You don't ask. But you keep the note. Fold it carefully. File it under. Maybe. That afternoon, Pearl's fixing a tear in a lace shawl while humming some broken tune from New Orleans. Eliza is learning how to dice onions without losing a finger. Maggie is taking bets on how long the next customer will last before making a fool of himself. Ruby is napping on the bar, and hat over her face. Knife, unahahin. You sit in your rocker, eyes half-lidded, listening to the rhythm of survival. Historians still argue whether madames like you controlled the West or simply outlasted it, whether you bent the rules or rewrote them, whether you were building something or just holding it together with grit and corset wire. You know the answer. You were the only one who ever saw the whole map. You saw the lies and the ledger, the stagecoach and the shotgun, the silk ribbon and the bruised eye. You saw it all, and you stayed. And the saloon, it's still standing. Because so are you. It's 3 a.m, and you're sitting in the corner booth, staring at the floorboard where he bled out. You've never pulled it up. Never sanded it clean. Just left it like a scar quiet. Familiar. And never quite healed. The blood's gone brown now. Barely visible in low light. But you remember the shine when it was fresh. You remember the way he looked at you? confused, like he didn't realize he was dying. Your first love. He was a card shark with a gambler's grin and a knack for vanishing right when the bullets started flying. Thought he was untouchable. Thought you were just another notch in a town full of stories. But you'd loved him anyway once. Long ago. Back before the pistol under your pillow became a part of you. Before the whiskey you served stopped tasting sweet. He died trying to protect you. That's what folks said. Maybe he did. Maybe he just got in the way. You never asked for his ghost. But it stuck around. Tonight, it creaks with every step you take across the saloon floor. The wind's loud outside, carrying grit and ghost songs. You pour yourself a Kia drink, no ice. Just bourbon and memory, and light a candle on the bar. Not for him. For you. By sunrise. You're in the office sorting coins when Eliza brings in a letter. No postage. Just your name? Scribbled in charcoal. You open it with the tip of a knife. Inside is a playing card, the King of Hearts. Soaked red. And a single word. Soon, you fold the letter slowly. Seal it inside your ledger. And set the page aflame. You call a meeting. The girls gather in the back room. Dressed in flannel and suspicion. You tell them everything about the bounty. The photo. The note. And the past you never wanted to explain. They don't ask questions. Not this time. Maggie says, "Do we kill him?" Pearl says, "Do we hide you?" Tilly says, "Do we have a plan?" You say yes to all three. The rest of the day is preparation. You reinforce the cellar door. Replace the nails on the back windows. Stash ammo under the floorboards. And test the hinges on the emergency exit behind the piano. Ruby teaches Eliza how to wield a hatpin like a dagger. Pearl invents a cocktail that smells like gunpowder and tastes like courage. The sheriff stops by. Asks about the noise. You give him a bottle and a lie. He drinks both without blinking. That evening, you host the quietest saloon night in memory. No piano. No gambling. Just conversation and the click of heels on hardwood. A few regulars notice the tension, but don't speak it aloud. The wind is still howling. But no one talks about it. Halfway through the night, a stagecoach arrives. No passengers. Just a driver with a scar along his jaw and a twitch in his eye. He doesn't speak. Just nods and tips his hat at you. You don't nod back. You know the man coming won't use the front door. He'll wait. He'll test. He'll try to scare you before he strikes. You send the girls to bed with knives under their pillows and promises you mean to keep. You stay up. Of course. Sitting in your rocker. Shotgun across your lap. Eyes on the wall. You watch the shadows dance. You listen for the floorboard that always groans when someone steps too close to the cellar hatch. Nothing comes. Just before dawn. You go upstairs. You unlock your safe and take out an envelope you haven't touched in 6 years. Inside a locket. A ticket to Chicago. And a deed to a house that doesn't exist anymore. You tuck the locket into your corset and burn the ticket. The past won't fit into your boots anymore. Pearl finds you later cleaning your pistol with the slow care of someone preparing for a sermon. "You sure you want to do this?" she asks. You smile. "I don't want to. I have to." She nods. "Then we're with you." You don't say thank you. You just clasp her hand and feel the strength in it. Historians still argue whether madames lived in fear or ruled by it. Whether the power they held was real, or just something men allowed so they could feel safe. But those historians never had their name written in blood. Never had to sleep with one eye open and one finger on the trigger. You've buried more memories than people. You've survived more heartbreaks than hangovers. And now, someone wants to bring it all back. You stare at the door and whisper, "Let him try." Then, you go back to work. The morning starts with a rattle at the back gate, the metal latch shivering like someone's trying not to be heard, but failing miserably. You're already dressed. Boots laced tight. Pistol on your hip. And the shotgun resting against the counter like it's waiting for a toast. You don't move toward the sound. Instead, you tap twice on the baseboard by the stairs. A signal. Within seconds, Pearl appears from behind the curtain. Knife in hand and slippers still on. She nods once. You nod back. You both move like you've rehearsed it. Because you have. You round the corner to the back door, just as the latch gives out. But it's not the scar-faced man. It's a banker's son. 17 at most. Pale. Sweat slicked. Shaking so bad his boots knock against the wall as he stammers. I didn't know where else to go. You lower the shotgun. Pearl doesn't lower the knife. He holds out a velvet pouch. It's filled with silver not stolen. He swears, but redirected from a less honorable account. He says someone's chasing him. Says he needs a place to hide. Says your saloon is the only spot in 5 counties, with doors strong enough to mean something. You let him in. Not because he's convincing, but because you remember what it feels like to knock and pray someone doesn't ask too many questions. You give him the room above the kitchen, the hot one, with the crooked window, and warn him not to touch anything. Pearl follows him up with a tray, and the threat of consequences. Back downstairs. Eliza is chopping onions with the intensity of someone thinking about revenge. Maggie hums a tune that only stops when the knife clatters to the floor. Ruby's pacing. "The man from before," she says. "He's in town." You feel it before she finishes saying it. The stillness in your gut. The tremor that isn't fear, but readiness. Where? Blacksmith's. Getting a blade sharpened. Of course he is. You call another meeting. This time, there's no question. You draw a map of the building in chalk across the bar top. Every entrance, every lock, every blind spot. You assign posts. Tilly takes the front door. Pearl the back. Ruby gets the stairwell. Eliza volunteers for the roof with a lantern and a mirror signal if he circles. You send word to the undertaker. Quietly. Not because you expect to need him, but just in case. The afternoon drags like a blade. Customers come and go. Laughter floats. Dice, roll. And everything looks normal. But it's all performance. Beneath the surface, everyone's listening, waiting for the hinge creak. That means danger has arrived. He doesn't come. Not until nightfall. You see him first through the mirror behind the bar. Tall. Lean. Moving slow like he owns time. He stops just inside the threshold. Boots on the hardwood. One hand on his belt. The other brushing dust from his coat. You turn to face him. "Hello, Lucille," he says. "No one calls you that anymore. Not even your girls." He walks to the bar like it's a wedding aisle. You don't blink. Neither do the girls. "You're not welcome here." You say, "I only want a drink." He replies, "You want more than that." He grins. Always did. For a moment, it's like nothing's changed. Like the years haven't turned your heart to iron and his eyes to knives. But they have. You feel it in the tension stretching across the room like piano wire. He sets a coin on the counter. "Whiskey." "Neat." You pour it. Slow. Steady. Eyes locked on his. He drinks. Then sets the glass down. I heard about the photo. He says, "You look good in black and white." You lean forward. "You came all this way to admire my cheekbones." "No," he says. "I came to finish what we started." That's when the girls move. Ruby's behind him first. Blade tucked into his waistband. Pearl is by the window, securing the exit. Maggie blocks the stairs. Tilly's got the door. You draw the pistol. He chuckles. "You gonna shoot me in your own saloon? I've done worse." You say. He looks around. Calculating. Not fear. Just strategy. Then he steps back. Hands up. "I'm not here for revenge." He says, "I'm here for what you owe me." You tilt your head. "I owe you nothing. You owe me a name." He tosses something onto the bar. A photograph. Not of you. Of another girl. Younger. Wide eyes. Blonde curls. Her face too familiar to be coincidence. "My sister." He says. You blink once. "I don't. She worked here. 5 years ago. She vanished." You search your memory like a cellar with bad lighting. Then it hits you. The girl with the yellow ribbon. The one who stayed for a week and left in the middle of the night with a gambler named Doyle. You remember because she always smelled like cinnamon and fear. She didn't vanish. You say, "She ran." He breathes out like a balloon popping. "I never hurt her." You add, "I believe you." He says, "But Doyle." You nod. "Dead. 3 years now. Snake, bite, and justice." Silence. Then he takes the photograph back, folds it into his coat. He nods once, turns to leave. At the door, he says, "Tell the girls they're lucky." You say, "No, they're ready." After he's gone, the tension breaks. Ruby exhales first. Tilly locks the door. Maggie sinks to the floor. You holster the pistol and pour a drink for every one of them. Not charge. Later that night, you sit alone in the booth again. You stare at the photo. He left behind an extra copy. You tuck it into your ledger. Historians still argue whether Madames held onto power through intimidation or community, whether their empires were built on fear or something more fragile, loyalty. You know what it was. It was the promise. "If you run to me, I will not let the wolves take you." And you've kept it. Every time, the saloon nearly burns down the next night. Not because of vengeance or gunfire, but because of a lantern and one fiddle too many. It starts with music too fast. Too wild. Ruby's on the fiddle. Maggie clapping along. And the piano man pounding out something that might be danceable, if everyone weren't 2 drinks past coordination. The place is packed. The air is thick with sweat, tobacco, and that lightning-touched buzz of people teetering on the edge of losing their last thread of common sense. You're behind the bar when the scream comes. Fire. One of the girls knocked over a lantern during a spin. Flames catch fast old drapes. Bourbon-soaked wood. Grease in the cracks of the floorboards. You don't think? You act. Bucket line you shout. "Elisa." To the well, Pearl. Rope off the stairs. Tilly. Get the ledger. Within seconds, chaos becomes choreography. The girls move like they've practiced. Because they have. You kick open the back door. Toss a blanket over a burning curtain. And douse the smoldering piano leg with your drink, wasting a fine whiskey. But saving a finer instrument, the fire never reaches the ceiling. You get it out before it eats the walls. But the smoke lingers, curling through the saloon like an old insult. When the last ember dies, you're covered in soot and sweat, heart pounding in your ears. Everyone alive, you ask. Nods. Coughs. Laughter. Somehow. Yes? The damage isn't catastrophic. A scorched curtain. A Vorptstoel. A whiskey shelf that looks like it went 10 rounds with a grizzly. But the fear stays. For a while, everyone speaks in low tones, moving, like the walls might snap. Later, you sit on the porch, boots off, legs stretched, watching the girls scrub soot from the baseboards. You light a cigarette with shaking hands. You ever wonder why we stay? Pearl asks. Sitting beside you, all the time. You say. She nods. And you ever get an answer? Only bad ones. She chuckles. The sheriff visits with questions and cheap sympathy. You tell him it was an accident. He offers a replacement lantern and a reminder that your fire license is expired. You offer him a smile and a bill for whiskey damages. He leaves faster than he came. After supper, the blacksmith drops off a repaired iron bracket for the wall lamp and stays for stew. He eats 3 bowls, leaves a pocket knife as thanks, and quietly tells you he's got 2 stallions if you ever need to ride fast and far. You don't ask if that's a warning or an offer. You take it as both. Eliza finds a half-burned photograph beneath the piano, a picture of a girl who left last winter. You can't tell if she made it out or not. You tape the charred edge and file it in your desk, just in case she ever writes. That night, Ruby plays slow. Just 1 string. Soft. A little broken. The room listens like they're holding their breath. You stand in the center of the saloon. Shoes off. Floor still warm from the fire. And wonder what might have happened if it had gone the other way, if the walls had collapsed, if the girls had scattered, if everything you'd built had turned to ash before breakfast. But it didn't, and neither did you. The next morning, the traveling horse thief returns. You recognize him by the scar on his lip and the saddlebag you've seen before. He claims to be a merchant now. You tell him you'll believe that when he sells you something you didn't already own. He grins, asks for tea. You pour it. But don't sit. You still carry that silver comb, he asks. You nod. Still sharp. Still mad at me. You smile. Still watching. He takes his tea, nods goodbye, and rides off on a horse that might be yours. You don't chase him. Not today. You spend the rest of the day with a hammer in hand, fixing the bracket, replacing the drapes, reinforcing the banister that cracked when Maggie threw a bucket too hard. The girls help. Even the piano man picks up a nail. By sunset, the saloon looks like itself again. Or at least, enough to fool outsiders. You gather the girls and toast to survival. Again, you say, raising your glass. And still, later, when everyone's asleep, you take the shotgun to the smokehouse and dig a hole. You bury the rest of the charred ledger pages, the ones that were too scorched to read, but too dangerous to leave lying around. You bury them deep. Next to the girl from weeks ago, no name, no headstone, but not alone. Historians still argue whether madames were protectors of women or just profiteers in a prettier dress. They ask how many lives you saved, how many you lost, whether the walls you built kept women safe or trapped. They never ask the better question. How many times did you burn and still come back? Tonight, the answer is once more. And in the morning, It'll be again. The sun rises slow and bruised after the fire, casting long gold streaks across the warped wood floors, like it's trying to make amends. You're awake before it, sitting in your rocker with the ledger in your lap, and last night's soot still clinging under your nails. You've slept maybe an hour, maybe less, but time in a saloon doesn't tick. It limps. The air smells like burned oil and old lemons. You take it in, like penance. Your legs ache. Your ribs throb. And your eyes sting. But the saloon still stands. And so do you. The first knock comes at dawn. Not the hard kind, no boot. No urgency. A soft tap. You open the door with your pistol at your side and find a boy standing there. Maybe 11, maybe 12. With hair like straw and shoes, 3 sizes too big. He holds out a letter with both hands, like it might bite him. She told me to bring this to you. He says, who's she? He shrugs. Didn't give a name. Paid me 2 silver. Told me not to open it. I didn't. You believe him. You take the letter, give him a warm biscuit and a coin, and send him on his way. He skips off like he's just finished a secret mission. Which? Ein fairness. He has. You open the letter at the bar. It's in a woman's hand. Careful. Affirm. Educated. It says, thank you for the girl. She's alive because of you. We're safe now. Don't stop. No name. No return. Just those lines. You fold the letter carefully. Put it in your desk next to the note from the banker. And feel a breath loosen in your chest. Later, you're fixing the curtains when you hear hoofbeats fast. Urgent. Heavy. You step outside just in time to see a horse galloping in. Rider slumped over the saddle. He's bloody, barely conscious, and covered in mud. You recognize him. One of the cattlemen from last spring. Came through with a busted shoulder and a voice that cracked when he tried to flirt with Maggie. You and Pearl drag him off the horse and into the saloon. You lay him on the poker table and shout for bandages, for water, for whiskey. He mumbles something about an ambush, said they was coming for the gold train. Someone talked too loud in town. They knew the route. Killed 'em all. I ran. You clean his wound, wrap it with torn muslin, and pour whiskey down his throat. He passes out before he can say more. You leave the bullet in. Too deep. By sundown. He's still breathing. Barely. You let him stay. But his words stay louder. You know what this means. Someone in town is feeding information to the wrong hands. Probably for silver. Maybe for spite. Could be the barber. Could be the blacksmith. Could be someone under your own roof. So you start watching. Closer. You keep notes. Who enters? Who lingers? Who stares too long at the coin box? Tilly notices. Paranoia, she asks. Insurance. You reply. You double-check the safe. The cash is still there. The deeds. The letters. The spare revolver wrapped in velvet. Still untouched. You start locking your door again. First time in 6 years. That night, the saloon is quiet. Half the town's spooked from the fire. The rest are watching the clouds. Storm season's early this year. The piano man plays slow. His hands stiff. You serve fewer drinks but pour them stronger. Eliza finds a coin on the floor with a strange mark like a brand. Coiled snake. You don't recognize it. But Pearl does. That's the mark of the Red Creek boys. She says, smugglers, Trade bullets more than whiskey. You pocket the coin and file that away. Just after midnight, someone throws a rock through the window. No knot. No reason. Just a rock. Sharp and fast. Ruby dives for the floor. You don't flinch. You retrieve the stone. Place it on the bar. And continue pouring. If they want to make a mess, you mutter, they better bring a broom. The next morning, you post a sign on the door. No violence without permission. By noon, people are chuckling at it. By evening, someone's stolen it. You post another. You host a poker game that night to keep spirits up. 5 silver to join. Winner takes half. House keeps the rest. You rig the table just enough to let Eliza win. She grins wide and passes you 10% anyway. It's the happiest you've seen her. You write her name down in your ledger. Not for debts, just for history. Before bed, you check on the cattleman. Still breathing. Still unconscious. Tilly's curled in the corner, with a book of poems she doesn't understand, but likes the sound of. You tuck a blanket over her and turn down the lamp. In your room, you sit by the window with a whiskey and the shotgun, just in case. You look out across the desert, listening to the wind. Historians still argue whether the West was tamed by law or by fear, whether madams were monsters or mothers in red silk, whether anything sacred ever grew from blood-soaked dirt. You think maybe they're all missing the point. It wasn't law or fear that kept places like yours standing. It was vigilance. And right now, you're still watching. The next morning, you wake to the sound of boots on the porch and shouting in the street, 2 things you never want before your coffee. You peer through the front window to see 3 men on horseback. One, waving a pistol. The other shouting about stolen gold, and that saloon woman, which, given the competition, could only mean you. You sigh. Lace your boots. Tuck a derringer into your waistband. And throw a kettle on the stove. By the time you open the door, the sheriff's already there, trying to mediate with all the grace of a nervous mule. Now, boys, he says, holding his palms up. I'm sure Miss Lucille had nothing to do with. They say you tipped off the Red Creek gang. The lead man growls at you. He's got the posture of someone who used to be military, then forgot why he left. You take one long look at his belt. 6 bullets. 1. Empty loop. His right hand twitches. Nervous. You step out. Arms folded. If I tipped them off, you say, they'd be rich and you'd be dead. Neither happened. The other men shift in their saddles. They weren't ready for logic. You offer coffee, just to throw them off. The boldest one says, yes. You make it strong, and hand it to him, with a spoon carved from bone. Just a subtle reminder. They don't stay long. They never do. Not when they realize the danger here doesn't sleep. Inside, you find Ruby at the counter, inspecting bullet holes in the ledger cover, like she's evaluating artwork. Think we should start charging extra for danger pay, she asks. We already do. You reply. Later, you clean up the mess from the confrontation spilled dirt. A cracked floorboard. A broken bottle of peppermint cordial you were never going to sell anyway. The bartender is late again, which gives you time to mentally fire him for the 3rd time this week. Pearl is restocking the bar, moving like a woman who's planning to leave but hasn't found the right song to walk out on. She's kidder these days. Not sad. Exactly, just thoughtful. Like she's memorizing things. You all right, you ask? She shrugs, thinking about the river. You nod. That's all she needs to say. The girls talk about it sometimes, the river being that invisible place beyond the saloon. The town. The grit. Maybe it's a city. Maybe it's a cabin in the woods. Maybe it's just a dream where nobody bleeds on the floorboards. I'll miss you when you go. You say, I haven't left yet. But she will. You both know it. That afternoon, you're interrupted mid-ledger by the sound of boots stomping in panic. Tilly. Breathless. He's back. You don't have to ask who. You grab the pistol, tuck it into your apron, and head for the stairs. In the hallway, you find the man with the scar, your old ghost. The bounty hunter who once brought you roses and now brings you ruin. He's not armed, just standing there, waiting. I'm not here to fight. He says. No. You reply. You're here to ask something you shouldn't. He nods once. Tell me what happened to her. You pose. He means the sister again. She left with Doyle. You say. Slowly. I told you that. But why? His voice breaks a little. Why would she run? Because you followed too close. You reply. Because she wanted out of the whole game. And you kept dragging her back. He looks like you hit him with something heavier than words. She's alive. You add, I don't know where, but she made it. He closes his eyes. Thank you. You nod. Don't come back. He doesn't, after he's gone. You check the rooms. You check the locks. You check the back door, and the safe, and the wall where the shotgun hangs. Then you sit down in your office and breathe like a storm just passed. Ruby pokes her head in. You gonna be okay. You grin. That depends. Are you? She shrugs. Always. That night, you host a dance. No reason. No anniversary. Just music and the space to move. Maggie takes the fiddle. Pearl plays spoons. And Tilly manages a little jig that has old Buck whooping, like he's 20 again. You wear your good dress, the deep green one that makes your eyes look dangerous. You spin once with a prospector who smells like sagebrush and good luck. You dance again with the piano man, who never smiles but hums while he shuffles. The girls glow. The customers stay late. The sky outside turns violet. And for a moment, the saloon feels like a lighthouse instead of a trap. After midnight, the undertaker arrives with a flask and a story about how the preacher's son is secretly writing love poems. You tell him the mayor's wife is practicing witchcraft, and he doesn't even blink. You sit together on the porch, sipping from his flask. You ever think about quitting? He asks. Once. You say. Then someone needed help. He nods. You watch a coyote lope across the horizon, silent as a whisper. Somewhere in the dark, a train whistle wails. Historians still argue whether women like you were built from grit or just grew thicker skin over time. Whether you held power or were forced to carry it. Whether the saloon was your kingdom, your prison, or your grave. You don't care anymore what they say. You know what this place is. It's your work. It's your war. It's your home. And until someone pries it from your smoke-stained hands, it always will be. The sky is bruised again, dust and cloud curling together over the desert like two old enemies, giving each other one more reason. You know the look of a storm that's not ready to break but wants to be seen. You light a lantern anyway. Light means warning just as much as comfort in your world. Inside, the saloon glows warm and worn, burnished wood, gold lamp glass, lace curtains, restitched too many times to count. Eliza is sweeping the main floor, humming something soft and tuneless. Ruby is practicing poker tricks with a borrowed deck, flipping cards between her knuckles, like she was born with aces in her fingers. Tilly's folding linens into perfect squares, her brow furrowed like the fate of the universe is trapped in a crease. Maggie's reading a letter aloud in the corner, pausing every few sentences to laugh or sigh or go quiet. Pearl isn't there. Not anymore. She left at sunrise. Boots, laced, hair teed, bag slung over her shoulder, with a single silver button stitched into the strap. Didn't cry. Didn't explain. Just kissed each of the girls on the crown of their heads. Met your eyes. And said, "I need the river now." You'd nodded. Gave her half your emergency coin stash. And told her to take the back road. You'd even packed her an extra pair of socks. You still can't bring yourself to sweep her room. Instead, you walk the length of the saloon. Floorboards creaking under your bare feet like a song. Only you remember. You touch the bar, the piano, the cracked frame of the old painting that's hung crooked since before you owned the place. You stop at the booth where he died your first love, and sit for just a moment. The bloodstain's long gone, but you still smell smoke when the wind shifts. Then you rise and head to the back room, where your safe waits. You open it slow. Inside are 5 things: the ledger, the locket, the pistol with the inlaid handle, the deeds to the saloon, and a photograph of the girls. It was taken last fall, after Ruby swiped the camera from that traveling photographer and made him teach her how to use it. They're all there, lined up on the porch like a school picture, gone rogue. You're in it too. You hadn't wanted to be. But they pulled you in, made you smile. You're glad now. You tuck the photo into your bodice and close the safe. You don't know why. You just feel like something's shifting. The night starts slow. Just regulars. Laughter low. Drinks poured smooth. The piano man plays a lazy waltz that makes even the flies seem drunk. You dance with Buck for 2 songs. Dip him once. Nearly drop him. And send the room into a fit of laughter. Then the man walks in. You recognize him instantly. Not the face. Not the coat. But the way he carries himself. No weapon visible. No sound made. Just silence wrapped in shadow. He sits at the farthest table. He watches. You send Ruby over with a drink. Just to test the waters. She comes back with a shrug and a silver dollar. Didn't say much. She says, "But he asked for you." Of course he did. You pour a whiskey, set the bottle down, and walk over. You don't ask his name. You don't offer yours. You just sit. "Long ride," you say. "Too long." He replies, "What are you here for?" He eyes the room. To see how it ends. You lean back. You think this is ending. He smiles. And it's the kind of smile you only see once, like the last flicker of a match. "I think everything ends." You place the pistol gently on the table between you. Maybe. But not tonight. The room quiets. The man stands. Nods once. And walks out. He never draws. You don't follow. The girls exhale. Later, when the saloon is closed and the lamps are down to their final flickers, you gather the girls and sit together on the floor. No drinks. No stories. Just silence and presence. Tilly lays her head in your lap. Elisa clasps your hand. Ruby leans on your shoulder and whispers, "We made it again." You smile. We always do. Historians will keep arguing. Of course. That's what they do. They'll pick through your ledger and guess at your heart. They'll romanticize or vilify, depending on what sells. But they'll never feel this. The warmth of bodies in the dark. The hush after survival. The weight of knowing you did something impossible in a place that chewed up people like tobacco. They won't smell the old floor polish, hear the last piano note hang in the air, or know the taste of dusty whiskey after a day full of ghosts. Only you will. And, as you blow out the final lamp and step into your room, where the wind flutters the lace curtain and the desert whispers at the door, you know it's enough. You're still here. You're still standing. And the saloon. Your saloon will open again tomorrow. You're sitting in your rocker now. The night finally still. The girls are all asleep upstairs, curled into soft blankets. Their breath slow, steady, safe. The piano is silent. The fires burn down to soft red coals. Outside, the wind has lost its edge. It hums now, low and steady, brushing against the shutters like it's too tired to cause trouble. You can feel it. That strange calm after chaos. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask questions or demand answers. It just is. The saloon creaks softly as it settles into the dark. Each board and beam breathing with you. Everything's holding. For now, you think of the stories that will never be told, the ones buried out back, or carried off by stagecoach, or stitched into the hems of skirts that left for river towns far away. You think of Pearl, wherever she is now. You think of the girl you once were, and wonder if she'd recognize you at all. Probably not. And slowly, you start to relax. Your shoulders soften. Your grip on the past eases. Just a little. You let yourself lean into the quiet. Let your heartbeat slow to match the tick of the clock and the hush of the wind outside. Everything's okay. Just for this moment. You're safe. You're still here. And you did good. Now, close your eyes. Let the desert breathe for you. And rest easy. You've earned it.